Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this episode. Mark DeJesus in the house, bringing you insights for your healing and freedom journey, especially when it comes to mental, emotional, and relationship health. Let's talk about your emotions. And in this broadcast, what I'd like to get to is 10 things that I would like you to know that I think are very, very important to know, things we need to know about our emotions. And if today's broadcast is a blessing to your life and your journey, go to markdejesus.com where you can subscribe to our newsletter, get a free ebook on a powerful book, Experiencing God's Love as Your Father. And you can also get update on special resources, materials, and all that good stuff. There's even a topics page where you can search by topic for certain things that you're working through in your life and in your journey. Be sure to subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell so you're always made aware of any lives that are broadcast and all that good stuff. So, emotions. What's been your history on emotions? What were you taught about emotions? What's been your relationship with your emotional life? Have you even considered what a relationship with an emotional life even looks like? Well, today I want to give you 10 things to think about that could possibly jumpstart your journey in a more fruitful direction, because I do notice that a lot of us don't know how to relate to our emotional world in a fruitful way. We get stuck, we get overwhelmed, or we get shut off, or we just are left confused. Well, check out these 10 things and see what helps for your life and for your journey. These 10 things, I'll start with number 1, which is thoughts have emotions connected to them. I do a lot of discussion about thoughts, right? And we talk about our thought life, what thoughts we listen to, what thoughts we pay attention to, what thoughts are saying. Well, the reason that thoughts have an influential work on our lives is because they have emotions connected to them. So when you have thoughts floating through your mind, being recalled or being stirred up, there's an emotion connected to it. And when you respond to a thought, you're actually responding to the emotion of that thought. It's the emotional association you have with that thought. Certain thoughts bring up a fear response. Certain thoughts bring up an anger response. Certain a rejection response, a shame response. It could bring a joy response, a happiness response, a laughter response. All kinds of different emotions it could bring up. The emotion helps us to realize the association we have with a certain thought. And that influences decisions we make, things we do. Even those people that say, I'm not very emotional. You know, I deal with my emotions in a proper way. Even those people, they still are influenced by the emotional association they have with a certain thought. It moves what we move towards. It influences what we move away from. It influences what we pay attention to. It's all about those emotions. So wouldn't you say we would all need some help in this area and knowing how to navigate our emotional world? The second thing that's important is that emotions are like waves. They change, they come and go. And so you can kind of imagine your emotions being like being in a river. And I'll give you 3 examples and you can try to find where you are at in which example. As you see the water coming like a wave, some of you get drowned in some of the emotions. They overwhelm you, right? Even though the waves of it, they're not going to stay forever like that. They change, they move. And if you're out in the ocean, especially, you see this changing happen, the changing tides, the changing movement. Many of us, number 1, we get drowned underneath them. Do you find yourself in that? Overwhelmed. Anxiety overtakes you. Depressive feelings overtake you. Sadness or grief or just you just get overwhelmed by them. You may even feel like you get taken by, technical term would be like manic emotions. You know, these things that just take you over, and you go into not labeling you manic, but just using that terminology of like these intense emotions. It could be addict emotions. It could be all kinds of things you just get overwhelmed by. The second one is you push it back, right, and you dam up the flow of the water. And that's because you don't want to deal with it at all. The problem is those emotions that get, you put a dam there, a blockage there, and the intense pressure builds up and builds up and builds up and builds up. And you're going to have a problem. You're going to have an explosion that's going to take place there. And so that's why people end up with anger and even addictions form, or depression, or certain burnout, or symptoms down the road that reveal we just blocked it up. Don't deal with emotions. Or maybe there's a third aspect where if we were to watch this river, right, and the river is the flow of your thoughts. For some people, they get obsessive compulsive about it. Debris gets like clogged, like there's something that passes through, and it's like that branch and it just gets stuck there for a moment. And what's meant to keep flowing through, now it's stuck, and then everything else that comes through gets stuck, and it accumulates, right? And it accumulates this big blockage that you're focusing, and it creates this blockage for the river to flow because all this accumulation has happened over this one thought, over this one area that you can't seem to work through or be able to allow it to get unstuck so the river of your thoughts can flow through. Where do you find yourself in that journey? Which of those three? Overwhelmed by the waves, you got a blockade up, maybe a dam has been built, or three, debris gets stuck and caught, and there's an accumulation that prevents the fruitful flow of your thoughts from just being able to be like a river, because emotions are not permanent. They don't have to be permanent. They're things we're going through. They don't have to be things that we're stuck in or deny or get drowned under. The third thing that's important to recognize is emotions are involved in how we relate. If you want to have better relationships, you have to learn how to connect to your emotions. Many times this is called emotional intelligence. It's being aware of what's going on in your inner world, knowing what to do with it, and how to process that in your day-to-day interactions, in your day-to-day relationships. They are involved in how we relate in three areas: God, ourselves, and other people. Where do you find there to be the struggle? And this is where the battleground is in our emotional life, is how we perceive God. And that's where thoughts and emotions can invade that area that create a disconnect, that keep us from having a fruitful relationship with God. The second is how you see yourself, and all these war of thoughts and emotions. The ones to yourself, you get used to them. It often takes someone to shine a light for you to see how hard you are on yourself, how judgmental, how shaming, how harsh your inner critic is, because you get so used to it. It's so familiar. Then there's how you relate to other people. And so if you want better relationships, you're going to have to learn how to deal with, how to work through and navigate your emotional life more effectively. Number 4 is there's a spectrum of emotions we're meant to experience. Some of them we try to avoid, we try to get away from, but there's elements of sadness as well as joy. There may be moments of anger, but also moments of excitement. There could be moments where you're feeling hurt. There's also moments and seasons you're going through grieving. There's a variety of emotions. And I found in my work with people, when it comes to mental health and heart healing and areas of addictions, I found it so necessary to do work about helping people to navigate their emotional world. For example, people who struggle with addictions have a hard time connecting to painful emotions. They don't know how to receive love and nurture in the pain areas of their life. So what happens is they look to a substance, they look to a habit, they look to a person, something that becomes an addictive connection to escape pain, move towards pleasure as quickly as possible, but it disconnects them from being able to connect to things that they need to recognize. And so what I find helpful is actually people that struggle with addictions actually need to reconnect with what they are actually feeling. And many times there's a disconnect in even vocabulary of how to name. People who need heart healing from trauma, maybe they numb out, they disconnect, disassociate, and we don't connect to things, right? We don't allow ourselves to feel what we need to feel through. We just want to feel better. So we go for the feel better without going through some of the valleys that we need to go through to come out on that side. So there's a spectrum of emotions that you need to allow yourself to feel and work through. I'll get to that more in just a second. But number 5, we often avoid painful emotions in search of trying to get to the feel better emotions. This is what I was talking about, where we will run from pain, we go to pleasure, we go to comfort as quickly as we can. I just want to feel better. Some people do this with addiction. Some people do it with checking out. Some people do it with what I would call positive denial. It is a form of denial, is just constant positivity. Well, think positive, think positive, think positive, think positive. And when you watch that person over time, they actually deny the existence of painful things, and they're very uncomfortable with dealing with painful things because they shoot so hyper positive. They don't know how to navigate the spectrum of emotions. In fact, super positive people often have moments of trauma and pain in their life that's how they responded with it. I'm just going to think positive, put that away, and we're going to move on. We're going to move forward, right? And then they wonder why down the road stuff bubbles to the surface because they haven't learned to work through some of that pain and some of that emotions. So 6 is it is important that you and I learn to identify what we're feeling. Identifying what you're feeling needs learning. We have to be taught this. What is it that you are feeling? How are you doing today? And a lot of times when people sit down in a counselor's office, the traditional statement that is said is what? How did that make you feel? They're not just saying this just to pass the time. They're wanting to cue you and equip you into learning to acknowledge what it is that you're actually feeling so that you can navigate through it effectively. I'm going to do another video on some myths and misunderstandings about acknowledging emotions, so stay tuned for that. But often many of us need a greater depth and even the words we use when we are talking about emotions. We need to expand. A lot of times we're going to talk to people sitting in a one-on-one or just even in casual conversation, like, oh, wow, how'd that make you feel? I don't know. Right? We kind of get stuck. We don't know what to say because that emotional vocabulary hasn't been accessed and equipped so that we know how to go deeper with connecting to what's really going on. Or we just use certain terms and we use them over and over again. I'm just upset. I'm just upset. I'm just upset. I'm just upset. And one thing that's helpful is learn to identify what is it that you're feeling. And 2, can you expand the language of it? What may be helpful for you is utilizing something. Now, the print on this is very, very small, but this is like an example, and you can find these online. In fact, I will send a link to the Etsy link that I got this from and download. And the very kind lady who runs the page I'm going to link you to gave me permission to go ahead and just put it up on the screen. But I also want to put a link to this for just a few dollars. You can download this yourself and have it. It's got quite an expansive list. And I would encourage you to get that because this can help your vocabulary of adding words of what you're feeling and what you might be going through. And I found people that struggle with this, often utilizing a tool like that can really help you navigate and work through your emotions and how you connect to God and how you connect to yourself and how you even share in relationship. This is what I am feeling. I'm always learning how to expand my emotional vocabulary to enhance my relational world, because that's really the goal of relationships, of working on our emotions, is that our relationship world improves. So maybe a tool like this could be very, very helpful. Again, I'll put it in the show notes. I'll put it in the notes in YouTube. I'll put it in on the website as well too. I'm grateful to be able to show that to you. So number 7 is how you interpret your emotions is key. And what I mean by this is exactly that. What do I mean? What does this mean? When we have a thought, it's not the thought. You could have a crazy thought. You know, we talk about crazy thoughts. An absurd thought. You can have a disturbing thought. It's not the thought that arrives, because we get hung up on, where did this thought come from? What is it? That's not the problem. The problem is when the thought arrives, what we do and react to it and how we interpret it. In my work with obsessive compulsives in particular, I do a lot of work surrounding the obsessive compulsive battleground. And where things get really difficult for them is not just a thought that arrives, because they'll have a disturbing thought. It's their interpretation of it that then takes it off the rails. In fact, if you sit down and talk with somebody who's struggling with their thought life, it doesn't have to be OCD. It could be a variety of areas. Where they are struggling is how they interpret their thoughts, how they interpret where they are in life. Interpretation is everything. So we often have to reevaluate. What does this mean? What's the story that I'm attaching to this? Because story connects to emotions. And if my story weaves a certain pattern a certain way, it's going to influence a certain emotional perspective in my life and how I act and how I behave and how I live. Number 8 is there's the 8 and 9 are going to be 2 responses that I mentioned. Many people drown in their emotions. And this reveals that there is a lack of equipping. It represents a lack of nurture to be able to go, first of all, it's okay that you're not okay. It's okay if you're struggling. Comfort is here. Let's calmly walk through so that we can experience recovery. We can experience comfort. And for so many of us, this has been absent. It's just almost like we're starting over, trying to learn. There's also many people that suppress their emotions. And these emotions will come out. They're going to happen. They usually come out in anger down the road. They come out in addictions. They come out in sometimes depression because stuff has been pent up. They've not allowed themselves to acknowledge, to grieve, and work through some challenging emotions. And so where do you find yourself? Because number 10 is we all need to work on our emotional life. We all need equipping in how to work through our emotions because emotional healing will lead us into maturity. And emotions, developing your emotional life really starts with learning to first acknowledge them in an environment of compassion and grace. Compassion directs us to God's love, his kindness, his patience towards us, his receptivity of us. He brings us in. Grace points us to the journey that God's leading us on a journey. He's empowering us to walk a journey. This isn't a quick fix. This is a learning journey, right? It's God's power working in your life as you walk on that journey. We acknowledge this is what we're feeling. We know it's not permanent, but it's something we're going through. And nurture brings that voice of loving compassion and grace. And then we begin to go, what does this mean? How do I interpret this? Is it because I'm a bad person? And typically we go harsh on ourselves. We're always going harsh. So it doesn't allow us to sober up to what actually is going on. Sobriety is the ability to see things the way that we need to see them. We don't drown in them. We don't run away and avoid and deny them, right? And we often flip-flop back and forth between the two, don't we? We deny, no, everything's fine. We skirt around it, we avoid it, and then we go, as what we need to do is land in sobriety, we go into overwhelm. It's just wearing me down. And those can form things like victim thinking and self-pity that keep us in a stuck state. Well, oftentimes to shift out of those areas, we need loving compassion and grace to invite us into the grounded place. And we reinterpret our journey through God's love and his grace for us. And we realize I need to work through, because anger, for example, is an emotion to work through, because many times underneath anger are some things that are deep passions, deep convictions of ours, but we need to let love have a work in those areas where we recognize I'm scared, I'm afraid. Those become areas where the love of God can have a deeper work, the perfect love that casts out fear. It's all kinds of things that we go through and that we feel. We get lost in them. Sometimes we just indulge them, but we don't allow love and nurture to calmly walk us through them. And that's what I want to encourage you into today. So which part of today's talk spoke to you the most? Which is the one that you can begin putting into practice as far as just awareness? If you'd like to jump into the heart healing journey, that's a great next step. And right in the middle of it, there's 3 chapters that are great in helping you navigate tough seasons of your life through the language of God's love for you. But the whole book, each chapter has an invitation to walk through certain aspects of your heart healing journey to experience greater healing and freedom and awakening from the heart. And if this broadcast is a blessing to your life and your journey, again, go to markdejesus.com. Many people have supported the work of this ministry. You can donate a one-time donation, or you can become a regular supporter on a monthly basis. But I pray that what today brought out will help you. I'm going to bring some more stuff on emotions, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. This is your brother from another mother letting you know I'll be back for another broadcast at some point. But in the meantime, I'm out.